In the last episode about recurring dreams, one story strongly implied the potential existence of the previous life, that we had another life before the current one. That gave me an idea to delve further into the theme of the previous life and reincarnation for this week's episode. The concept of previous life and reincarnation do exist in the Western world too, but they are usually treated as a minor concept and certainly hasn't been supported by the mainstream Christianity. In Asia, the concept is thought to be originated from ancient India, and it still forms the backbone of the worldview in Hinduism and Buddhism. Unlike more linear model of reincarnation from the West, Eastern reincarnation forms a circle, implying the rule of causality and continuity. This worldview of reincarnation was largely used to encourage the more moralistic and religious life, just as the vision of hell and heaven was in Christian religions. Your next life will be determined by how you live the current life. The more evil and harm you cause, the stronger karma you'll get tangled up with and end up born in the next life into more complicated and harder situation, or sometimes even in lower forms of animals. In Buddhism, the ultimate goal is to reach the nirvana and break away from karma and the endless circle of reincarnation that is full of pain and triviality. The concept of reincarnation, or the circle of life, is familiar to most Koreans, regardless of their religion or whether they actually believe in it. One can see it from such colloquial expression as 내가 전생에 무슨 죄를 지어서, meaning what sin have I committed in the previous life, when one complains about a hardship or a difficult situation. For that reason, when hypnotic regression was introduced in Korea, it gained interest and popularity for a time, some hypnotists even gaining the celebrity status. You will indeed find some of the today's story mentioning hypnotic regression. So, here are 4 allegedly true stories from Korea about the previous life and reincarnation. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by your host, Anthony. A few years ago, I lost a friend. Best friend would be short of describing what he was for me. A soulmate would be more like it. We just connected, and I could talk about the deepest of my thoughts and mind. I stayed on the full 3 days of his funeral. People say a funeral shows clearly how much the person has been valued by the others in life. My friend must have been valued by many, seeing unusually many friends and acquaintances visiting for the funeral of such a young person. I remember in the quiet hour of an early morning how I prayed in front of his picture, that we'd meet again in the next life as a parent and child, that I would then protect and nurture him with my life. I think I lived on alcohol for at least a year afterwards. Years passed, and I somehow recovered from the loss and lived my life. Meanwhile, he had not once appeared in my dreams until 2 years ago. The dream was incredibly real. It just felt like real. My friend was standing in front of me, and I jumped on him shouting, "You are back at last!" I was happy beyond any description. My friend looked at me with sad eyes and said, "I must go, and I won't be able to come again." I grabbed his hand and shouted, "To where? You've just come!" I kept asking, crying out loud and kicking the ground, but all he could say was that he could not come back again. When I woke up, I bewailed. The dream was so real, I could not tell what was dream and what was real. When I could finally get hold of myself, a strange idea grabbed me. That he was to reincarnate. That's why I wouldn't be able to see him even when I die. I can still remember his voice and the warmth and feeling of his hands. All I can say is that I pray he was born again to a beautiful world, and that I'm grateful that he came back to say one last goodbye to me. Before I read the next story, I should briefly explain about Hwarang. Hwarang was a youth group movement during Silla dynasty from around 6th century onward. Their motto strongly emphasized loyalty to the king and the nation and focused on training their body and mind through music, martial training, and traveling in the nature. As the name Hwarang, literally meaning flower boys, implied, these boys were selected not only for their social class and intelligence, but also their physical beauty. They were often described having put on a makeup, and the best examples of them enjoyed something akin to an idol status. As you can see from the contemporary Chinese depiction of envoys from different countries, the envoy from Silla is particularly delicate and well-groomed. It clearly shows the aesthetic of the country, and Hwarang must have been the epitome of that. There are some theories about potential homoerotic relationship among Hwarangs, but mainstream scholars largely dispute them for lack of concrete evidence. Now, on to the story. I have interest in notion of reincarnation and the previous life, so when I came across a YouTube video that claims to induce hypnotic regression, I naturally gave it a try. I actually didn't have much expectation, to be honest. I already tried several of such hypnosis videos and had nothing happen till then. But oh my, this time I must have gone deep down, so much so Mom had to wake me up hearing me choking and going breathless. So here's what I saw under hypnosis. The first vision was of my own feet clad in leather boots walking along an unpaved road. I could hear a long sheath I was carrying tapping on the ground as I walked. I must have been little, still too small to carry a sword without dragging it along. In the next vision, now I was a grown-up man. I heard somebody calling me, Lord Hwarang. So I guess I must have been in Silla dynasty. I smiled happily to the caller, which made me think it was somebody I loved. At first, I naturally assumed it should be a girl, but it didn't lead me to any further vision. But when I thought, could it be a man? A vision of a young face occurred. Its smiling face was bright and innocent. I could somehow sense he should be younger than I, and from the lower social rank. The end of this life was painful. I was beaten up by a group of people and locked up in a dark storage. I coughed up blood and in grave pain, but all I could think was, is it all right? I guess I was worrying about the boy I loved. It was then I started struggling to breathe in real life too. Oh, the pain of the last moment. It felt like I was drowning with my own blood filling up my lung, and a chilling sense of cold. I could sense my death was by an order from somebody more powerful than I. All I could think was one name, Yun. That must have been the name of the boy. How I regretted that I had never given him one warm hug. In the next life I will, was my last thought. When I woke up from the hypnosis, I cried a long time. My reason was telling me it might not be true at all, but the emotional charge was hard to dismiss. But then it would have been all just an interesting experience, had it not happened that I encountered her in the new school term. I had never had a crush till then. I have never adored an idol singer or an actor either. But there, I had an instant crush when I saw a classmate who looked exactly like Yun, the boy I saw under hypnosis. Especially that innocent, bright smile. I've always had interest in reincarnation, but I've never really seriously believed in it, and never really thought about the possibility of a reunion from the previous life. Problem is, I'm a girl too. I guess my love is just as impossible as in the previous life. My heart is heavy with a love that dares not speak its name, and just wanted to open it here, on the internet at least. Following is a true account of mine based on the diary I've been keeping over the years. December 26th, 2012. I had a dream so vivid that I can still remember it clearly. I was dead and was waiting for the judgment. The whole space was dark and immersed in black-red hue, and yet could still see everything clearly. There were indeed a lot of souls waiting in front of me and waiting for their turn. When a name was called out, the person would be brought out to the judge. Then came out a large screen showing the summary of the person's life, the good, the bad, and its consequences. If anybody tried to excuse their action or win a sympathy by feigning a regret, they were sternly reminded that their lives could be clearly visible because they were now nothing more than naked souls. As for the truly bad ones who caused damage and misery for lots of people, the floor opened up under their feet, which swallowed them down straight to the hell. Understandably, I was pretty nervous when my name was called out finally. So the summary of my life was shown on the screen. Surprisingly, it wasn't too bad a life, really. I almost enjoyed the opportunity to see the past moments and faces of dear people in my life once again. I definitely brought more good and help to the world than I did harm. When the screening was over, the judge said,
"Unlike how you look outside, you led a life devoid of selfishness. Your good deeds even saved a few lives on some instances."
I was relieved by the verdict. Surely I was going to the heaven.
"No, that's not true. He's a real badass. God knows how many hearts he'd broken, including mine,"
a woman shouted from the back. I turned around to find her, an ex-girlfriend of mine. But her claim wasn't true. We just drifted apart. What's wrong with her?
Aha! Relationship issues are private, and I usually leave it to the individuals. But if she should claim so openly as now, there should be a certain share you are responsible of. But disturbing this court is also an offense, so I pronounce you both guilty.
As soon as the judge said that, the hissing and cussing woman was dragged out, and I too was shortly taken away, still dumbfounded about what just happened. Behind my back, the judge said his last word.
"That girl is the karma you left in the world. Untie that knot first, and I shall see you again here."
I was thrown off into a dark pit. It soon led me to a bright light, and at the end of it, a giant picked me up by feet and spanked me at my back. "Congratulations, it's a healthy boy," the giant declared. I was soon wrapped up and laid on the bosom of an exhausted-looking woman. Looking up at her somewhat bitter smile, I suddenly realized, it's not that you hate me, but you couldn't let me go yet. And then I woke up. April 18th, 2014. My life is a bit of a hell at the moment. I have to find a new room as I could not get along with the previous roomie, that bastard. And on top of that, I have to go back to Korea for an urgent family issue. I could hire small storage to put away my things while I visit Korea, but the biggest problem was my cat. I had no friends who could take care of her, nor could I go through all the necessary paperwork to take her with me at this last minute. But for a ray of good luck out of all the misfortunes, a kind lady replied to my request on the community board. She would take care of my cat for no fee. God bless her. May 25th, 2014. I started dating the kind girl who took care of my cat. She's a real angel. April 12th, 2017. We finally announced our engagement to both of our parents. It's complicated with our families in Korea, but the wedding is set to take place next year, so I hope there's enough time to arrange things reasonably. February 7th, 2018. My parents told me they sought fortune tellers to check on our couple's compatibility. It's called kunghap and still common practice in Korea. Apparently, they went to see more than one fortune teller, and they all said one thing in common.
"Well, they were mother and son in the previous life."
It stirred me a bit because it suddenly reminded me of my dream from years back. I got the number of one of the fortune tellers and called to tell him about the dream.
"You remember only that far. I believe there was more to that. In that previous life, you died before your mother. She could not get over it, and for her longing, you two met again in this life. Your fiancée treats you so well, doesn't she, like a mother? She's doing all she couldn't do to her son in the previous life. Treat her back well. You two were destined to meet again, whether in Korea or wherever in the world."
November 10th, 2018. Despite all the usual hiccups one could expect from such an event, our wedding sailed through without any major disaster. So, I guess my dream has fulfilled itself after 6 years. When I was a freshman, I had a recurring dream. At first, I could not remember clearly what the dream was about, and just assumed it was all due to the stress from the midterm. But the dream kept recurring even after the midterm and only got more vivid. The dream was largely consisted with 4 scenes. In the first scene, I was dragging a young woman in hanbok, the traditional dress, onto the courtyard and beating her mercilessly. In the second scene, I was grabbing the poor woman by her hair and dragging her up to the well in the backyard. In the third scene, the beaten and bloody-faced woman was begging for her life, but I only laughed and scoffed and pushed the woman down the well. The fourth scene was the creepiest of all. I could hear the woman's voice ringing from the well. When I looked down, there she was, her mouth grinning, but her eyes dripping tears. She sneered and said,
Joy, I milled the axe down to a needle. Oh, joy!
The dream continued over a month, and I in the end seeked a fortune teller. He suggested to try a session of hypnotic regression, and what I saw under hypnosis was creepily in line with what I saw in the dream. In the previous life, I had a maid named Suyeon. I was ugly and dumb, while Suyeon was pretty and smart. One day I overheard my own parents plotting to disguise Suyeon as their own daughter and marry her off to a powerful family. I was mad, and while my parents were away to meet the future in-laws, I kicked and beat Suyeon regardless of her plea for forgiveness. I beat her so hard that her shirt was undone, revealing a big bruise on her chest from my kick. But I wasn't satisfied, and in the end, as in the dream, I pushed her down the well. After the hypnosis session, fortune teller recommended me to seek a shaman. I was reluctant, but he persuaded me that seeking a shaman in such a situation as mine was no more than a sick man seeking a doctor. I was a bit nervous, so asked a friend to accompany me to the shaman the fortune teller recommended. I told the shaman about the dream and the hypnotic regression session. The shaman smiled wide, revealing all her teeth, and then suddenly turned stone cold, which creeped me. She said,
You killed a person and didn't get punished. There's a karma. Didn't even bother to bury the body properly. There's more karma. The resentment is so high that it milled an axe down to a needle. Impossible, impossible. Then from her eyes looking up in the empty space, tears started pouring down. Poor girl, how scared and sad she must have felt, she said. She seemed to mumbling something to herself and suddenly startled and said, Somebody's expecting a baby soon around you. Isn't that so? Indeed, an aunt was expecting in a month's time. Oh dear, you are in trouble. It's too late though. That baby should have been aborted. I was so shocked to utter a word. My friend instead yelled, What the heck are you talking about? Why abort a baby? The shaman shouted back, glaring daggers at me. You killed the girl and lived on unpunished. But karma doesn't forget, and now coming back at you in this life. Seeing us still confused, she carried on. She's coming back at you, reincarnated as the newborn baby. Listen up, you shouldn't meet the baby till the first birthday. Why is that? My friend asked. Because babies remember their previous life in their first year, Shaman said. On the way back home, both I and my friend called the shaman BS, and it was all nonsense. But the dream mysteriously stopped coming back from that day. A month passed, and I almost forgot about it all as I stopped dreaming it again. The news of the birth of a new niece arrived, and I visited the aunt with my mom. Mom asked if they'd named the baby already. My heart dropped when Aunt said, "We named her Xian. Mother-in-law sought a fortune teller for a lucky name, and apparently he recommended that name strongly, that it will bring her luck and long life." I still wanted to believe it was just a coincidence. Her husband then laughed and said,
"Funny the baby has a spot on her chest. I first thought it a dirt and tried to rub it off."
When he revealed the chest of the baby to show us the spot, I felt my knees giving in as it resembled exactly the bruise I made to the poor maid's chest. I could not hide my anxiety anymore, so told Mom everything when we were back home. She said it was all nonsense, but must have been actually got worried herself. A few days later, she took me to a Buddhist temple. They arranged a memorial ritual for the dead maid, and I bowed and prayed for her peace and forgiveness for a few days. Even afterwards, I tried to avoid meeting the newborn niece. Even for her first birthday, I just sent my congratulations via text message. And it was just 2 months ago. I had a dream of a woman. She was crying her eyes out. She then threw a needle at me and disappeared. I called up the shaman from earlier, and she said it was all over now. Until this event, I never believed or gave much thought to shamanism or superstitions. But the whole sequence of events was too intricately linked to be just a coincidence. I'm feeling much more cautious about the whole life now.
Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Talking about reincarnation, people in Korea jokingly say, your partner was your arch-enemy and your children were your debtors in the previous life. Well, have a look at the face of your partner and kids, and tell me if you indeed see your enemy and debtors. If you enjoyed my video, please consider giving it a like and comment. And why not subscribe and help my little channel finally take off? Or else I shall become your partner or a child in the next life. I'll see you in the next. Stay safe and take care.